This No Way Home wave turned out so good. I thought the figures were fine individually, but didn't look that cohesive as a whole. But now that I have them all together after a bit of touch-up, they actually look really cool as a group. Hello, this is Ken. I like making things. I like making things out of paper, and I like making things cooler. Especially my figures. Sometimes figures don't look all that screen accurate. All they need is a bit of touch-up here and there to unleash their hidden potential. I also love using everyday tools and materials to recreate iconic scenes from my figures, so they can shine on my display. Subscribe to my channel and join my DIY adventure as I ask myself the same question every week. Can I make it? Last time I worked on Andrew's Spiderman figure. It's still a pretty difficult figure to nail, but I'm very happy with how it turned out. The three Spidermen now look amazing together. Check that video out if you haven't already. There's one more figure from this wave, Sandman. Okay, this is the figure I was least interested in. It just looks so basic, but Hasbro actually did a pretty decent job with this figure. It looks much better in person. I'm not sure if the body is reused, but the entire figure has that sand texture sculpted in. And I believe the shading is done with the print tech. Let's deconstruct this figure. There's an FAQ on the paint and brushes I use in the description box below. It's hard not to feel like this figure is too basic, but I do have to give props to Hasbro. That face sculpt is very well done. They captured Flynn Marco's likeness perfectly. The shading they did is also pretty decent in most areas, except for the legs and the backside. You can tell they kinda gave up on the backside. I appreciate them providing the big hands, but I kinda wish they were a bit bigger. I was expecting them to be gigantic, but this is probably the optimal size for him to balance. That said, they do look really good. Let's see if I can make this figure look even better. To be fair, there really is nothing wrong with this figure. It is perfectly fine the way it is. I love that they used the matte plastic for this, but I want to make him look more sandy, more rough, a bit more dramatic since this figure already looks so bare. So I'm gonna start with the pale color as the base. Oh, maybe this isn't the best idea. It's starting to look like snow. Behold, another Spider-Man villain is here, Snowman. That's not very menacing. Okay, it's time to add the details. I'm wetting my brush so the paint can just seep into the crevices. I'm gonna start by defining the general shape, adding the shading to the obvious areas, and emphasizing his muscle definition. Oh oops, he's starting to look too dark, but I can't stop now. I have to commit and do the same to the hands, otherwise they won't match. Okay, back to the figure. It's time to work on the finer details. I'm gonna stipple a variety of colors on the figure to achieve the sand texture. Let me do the pale color first, to brighten up the figure once more. The key is to keep the brush dry with minimal amount of paint and make sure I'm going straight in and out and not smear the paint. This way, I'm adding tiny specks of sand in a somewhat random manner. Okay, this process took quite a while. It's not that interesting to film, but I pretty much used these colors. The pale color as the main color, a deep dark brown for the dark spots or areas with shading, a warm tone brown for the midtones, and a tiny amount of gold here and there to make it glisten. But here he is. There's a lot more texture on Sandman now. Let me sear everything with the matte spray. Here's my final swing Spider-Man figure. This was the first figure I worked on from this wave. I gave him metallic weblines because I wanted to know how it looks on the figure, and I needed a figure to practice on before I work on Toby and Andrew. I personally like them more than the black weblines because they are less distracting. But a lot of you did comment and say that they shouldn't be metallic, and I agree. After doing all these Spider-Man, I figured out why I don't like the black web lines. They look too thick or too overpowering. I rewatched the final swing scene in No Way Home again. You don't really see the web lines until the very last frame. So yes, while the web lines are technically black in the movie, they're very subdued or thin. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna go over the metallic web lines with a medium brown. This is my logic. I need to first get rid of the shine, which can be done with any regular paint. But I need to use a color that slightly lightens the gunmetal color so the web lines don't get too dark. The whole reason why I painted over them in the first place was because I didn't love how dark and thick they looked. Since I can't change the thickness of the webbings, the only thing that I can do to trick the eyes is to lighten them. The brown I'm using is kinda similar to the red when it comes to tone, but by using it over the gunmetal, I should end up with a deeper matte brown. Alright, here's half the final swingsuit with the dark brown webbings. I think this will work. Let me do the other side off camera. Okay, let's look at the before and after. Starting with Sandman. One of the things I noticed is that the shading is much more balanced now. Look how unnatural the original lower body and back looks in comparison. The overall figure looks much more realistic. It was a bit too yellow originally. You can almost feel the painted sand texture through the screen. You definitely don't want to get punched in the face by Sandman. Besides the giant hands, I kinda wish they gave Sandman a pile of sand for his lower body, so it looks like he's emerging or something. But I don't know how they'll be able to do it convincingly without being too restrictive. The figure is actually very well sculpted. It just feels like there's a potential for it to become more epic. Like, maybe it would work better if the figure is bigger? Or they can include a giant face, so people can recreate that iconic scene from the trailer. And here's the final swing Spiderman. Ooh, I like it. The webbings still look dark, but they don't look like they're drawn on like the original figure. The suit looks much more like an actual suit now. I'm glad I gave this another go. I was scared of ruining it, but I figured if Toby and Andrew get a second chance, then the final swing suit should too. What do you think? Does the suit look better with the matte grayish web lines? I think if I were to redo this from the beginning again, I would just use either a dark gray or a medium dark brown, just to make the black less dominant of a color. The lighter webbings do make the spider symbol stand out more. It just makes sense to me, you know. The Spidey symbol shouldn't be obstructed by the web lines, like the bat symbol on Batman. That said, the final swingsuit looks a bit too vibrant against the other two Spider-Men. But over time, I've gotten used to it and actually appreciate that each figure is unique in their own ways. And when combined together, they actually look pretty good as a group. Okay, let's end this with a photo shoot. Starting with Sandman. The hands are surprisingly fun to pose. They did a fantastic job making the transition look seamless. While I wish the hands would be bigger, I do appreciate that these hands are very easy to pose and balance. They could have easily been a nightmare to deal with, so props to Hasbro for that. Maybe they can do something similar for Ms. Marvel too. But back to Sandman. He's actually very fun to photograph. I love the facial expression they gave him. You can almost tell his backstory just by looking at his face. Overall, great figure, but it kinda needs more companion pieces to elevate it even more. Like bigger accessories or some sort of display. As for the final swing suit, I'm still not a big fan of the mask. It still looks a bit like a basketball to me. It is too round or the eyes are too small. I prefer the unmasked look more. He looks more grown up without the mask. Alright, I hope you enjoyed today's video. I was a bit hesitant to this wave originally, but I'm very happy with how every one of them turned out. There is still Doc Ock and Green Goblin to do, but they'll have to wait till next year. So stay tuned for that. And until then, stay inspired and I'll see you soon. I can make it, so can you.